Right now, our member Beth Knox, the Nordic Museum. I got ahead of myself. How many have Scandinavian heritage in your families? Show of hands. A lot of you. We have Swedish and Norwegian in my family, among other things. But you know that Scandinavian heritage is a very important part of Seattle's history. And next month, on the 5th of May, a brand new Nordic museum opens to the public. And here with a preview is CEO Eric Nelson. Eric, come on up.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. A wonderful privilege and pleasure. And I'm going to have a hard time. Beautiful. Okay, great. Anyway, thank you for having me. It's great to be here representing not only the Nordic Museum, but the Nordic community. As you just demonstrated, there are a lot of Nordics and Scandinavians here in Seattle. In fact, we did some research when we started to do fundraising. I've been here for about 10 years, and we didn't have the information, but we went through census data and realized that about 12% of the population of King County claims to have some kind of Scandinavian heritage. So that should be 1 in 8. So if you're sitting at a table of 10, there should be at least one of you. So hopefully you're a member, and if not, we have some brochures in the back. Anyway, slides up here of Fisherman's Terminal back about 100 years ago. And the museum has a beautiful view of that in our new location. Anyway, as I said, we've got a lot of underpinnings of Nordic heritage here in Seattle, and it's really been a lot of what's been building this community for a while. The museum has been in a home in an old schoolhouse in Upper Ballard for the last 40 years. It's an old schoolhouse, Webster School. It was founded, or the building itself was built in 1907. We moved in there, again, 30 years ago, 40 years ago now. We've been there for 10 years, so it seems like time is flying. Anyway, it was a mess when we ended up in there. There were 652 broken windows, and there had been a fire. Blood, sweat, and tears went into creating a museum that has really excelled and grown. We went from a staff of 1 to a staff of 30 over the 35 years. And we continue to grow and foster and do a wonderful job. We've been drawing in about 65,000 people a year and hosting Viking Days and Yule Fest. How many of you have attended some of the festivals? Right on. How many of you are members? How many? All right, good. Completely lost. But now on May 5th, we will be opening a brand new facility. It's built, it's ready, the offices are full. We moved staff in the end of February, the 1st of March. We've been installing exhibitions and been doing a fantastic job getting ready for a grand opening. In fact, the festivities start on May the 1st, and they're going to stretch out through May the 5th. The building was designed by Johanni Polasma in Methuen. Omar Methuen founded the architectural firm back 30-odd years ago. Methuen is known and notable for sustainable architecture. We wanted to ensure real Nordic orientation, so we had them bring in a Nordic architect as a partner. So Johanni Polasma, the executive director of the Museum of Architecture in Helsinki, has been advising this to make sure that we have an authentically Nordic museum. You can take a look at the features. The Fjord Hall stretches from the front door to the back. It's about 100 feet or 100 meters long, and the ceiling in the grand auditorium is about 40 feet. So it's quite an impressive place, and you have to see it really to appreciate it. And a beautiful building needs a beautiful location, so instead of being squirreled away up on Sunset Hill in Ballard, we are right on Market Street between 26th and 28th, the block away from the locks, which I think is ideal. There's a lot of controversy 20 years ago when we started talking about where the new museum would be. A lot of folks thought we should be in South Lake Union or downtown. There was a push and a pull. We ended up buying property starting in about 2003 along Market Street, so it was a great investment. I think we ended up spending about $7 million for that 2-block stretch, which, again, looking backwards, was a fantastic investment. But you can see what it looks like now. We open up on the front door into the very boutiques and restaurants. On the back door, we open up into the working waterfront. There's been the historic Scandinavian neighborhood for generations, so we're perfect kind of wedged between history and hipster, which is a fantastic place to be, especially given Ballard and its changing demographic. It's really, again, as the last slide said, it's much more than just a relocation. We're really reinventing ourselves. You know, When we started this process 10 years ago, or when I came and joined the museum 10 years ago, there was a lot of discussion about building this new museum. The school district was talking about how much longer we were going to be able to stay. We knew that we needed to find a new home. We knew that we'd already started to buy property, but we weren't quite sure what was going to be in the new museum. So in the fact that we'd been successful and really focused on this 40-year period of Nordic immigration to the Pacific Northwest, we really kind of started asking ourselves, is that the most relevant story that we can tell? So we brought in focus groups, we went to Scandinavia, we did all sorts of research, and we realized that there's really a lot of stories that deal with Nordic heritage that people are fascinated by. So we wanted to kind of get our arms around those. That everything from Norse mythology and the Vikings to contemporary Nordic cinema and crime noir and design and sustainability, commitments to social justice. So it's all over the map. In fact, 10,000 years of history. There's a mystery of how we were going to shove all of that into a brand new museum. So we hired an excellent exhibition design firm out of New York, Ralph Applebaum and Associates. They just opened up the new African American Museum on the Mall in Washington, D.C. They've worked for the Smithsonian. They did the Holocaust Museum in Washington and museum. They've done a number of projects, especially focused with ethnic groups and specialties. So we brought them in and told them what we wanted to do, and we had lots of conversations with them. We started to kind of dwell on what's unique about the Nordic region and what's unique about the Pacific Northwest. And we kept coming up with the fact that there's some certain core values in Scandinavia that are equally core values here in the Pacific Northwest. You know, this commitment and interest in innovation, connection to nature, social justice, and a commitment to openness. Both places have these. So we decided that those would be the lenses that we'd look at this 10,000 years of history. That was great, but our collections really focused on a 20 to 40-year period of immigration history. So we were able to work with national museums throughout Scandinavia to borrow Stone Age, Iron Age, Middle Age objects that tell us the story. So when you come to the new museum, it will be a much fuller and richer story that looks not only at the ancient stories and the contemporary stories, but also the impact that Scandinavian immigration has had in the Pacific Northwest. So we're very excited about it. The other thing we're really excited about is the old schoolhouse was built as a school. It wasn't built as a museum. So we've invested a lot of money and energy into making sure the building was built to Smithsonian standards. It really allowed us to bring in world-class exhibitions. So we're working with the Phillips Collection in Washington, D.C. on an exhibition that's a survey of contemporary Nordic art. We're working with universities in Stockholm to bring in Viking exhibitions. We really want to show off Nordic culture, high culture, folk culture, and popular culture, which gets me to, oh, this was great, speaking of popular culture. I had the most incredible experience about 2 months ago. I opened up the Rolling Stones magazine and I saw the museum mentioned there. It's child of the 70s. I didn't think there was any higher. What could be better? And we're featuring a Danish punk band as part of the opening ceremonies, and they're kicking off in Seattle. So wow, bang. Last week I got a copy of National Geographic. We were in National Geographic right ahead of Cannes Film Festival. It was a thing not to miss. So again, the publicity has been fantastic. I'm going to race through because I think I've got a minute left. You know, since it's such a spectacular thing, we've decided to really create a whole month full of activities. So we've partnered with 20 organizations, KEXP, the Symphony, public libraries. At the month of May, you'll see a lot about Nordic goings-on here in Seattle. So it's all part of Nordic Week. So again, not to miss that. And one of the things I'm particularly excited about is our Nordic Innovation Conference that will be happening in our new museum. Couldn't imagine doing it in our old museum. Ericsson is supporting that. Microsoft will be there. There have been tech and innovation leaders from both the Nordic region and here in the Pacific Northwest that have made that all possible. Anyway, you are invited. Don't miss it. The museum's focus is moving from inward looking to outward looking. We want to make sure not just those of you that stood up or raised your hand are invited, but the entire community. So hopefully we'll see you on the 5th. For more information, the website. Thank you.
Eric, thank you. That's going to be fun. I hope there's an exhibit dedicated to whoever invented lutefisk and why. Why? My grandfather used to say, just mix it with your other food and swallow it. It'll go down. Okay, now I'd like to introduce our member, Beth Knox. She is president and CEO of the Special Olympics USA Games coming to Seattle this summer. She's here to set up our main program with Microsoft President Brad Smith.
So it is my privilege to introduce our featured speaker today, who will be interviewed by President Mark. So as president of Microsoft, Brad Smith is responsible for the company's corporate, external, and legal affairs and oversees a team of more than 1,400 business, legal, and corporate affairs professionals working in 55 countries. In this role, he leads the company's work on a number of critical issues, including cybersecurity, digital privacy, public policy and government affairs, intellectual property, accessibility, philanthropy, and environmental sustainability. As president, he has also spearheaded programs and initiatives aimed at increasing economic development and opportunity and to ensuring all of society benefits from technology's advances. Now, on top of that, Brad also agreed enthusiastically to serve as the Honorary Board Chair for the 2018 Special Olympics USA Games. And I'm fortunate to not only work with Brad, but also his amazing team, several of whom are here today. And I actually consider Brad to be near superhuman, because in spite of his enormous responsibility and workload at Microsoft, he is still incredibly engaged in helping make the USA Games successful in all the right areas. So his leadership has both been instrumental and inspiring. Please welcome Brad Smith.
Beth, thank you. Brad, it's good to have you here.
It's great to be back. Thank you.
So, I was reading through your bio. Prior to joining Microsoft, you were an associate and then partner with the Washington, D.C. law firm of Covington and Burling. Your bio says that you're still remembered as the first attorney in the history of the firm to insist on having a personal computer at your desk as a condition of employment. This was 1985, 86?
86.
So take me back to that time. Were you a visionary or just selfish?
I think I was.
We'd start there.
No, I think I was nuts, actually, because when I think back to it, I really wanted a job offer at this firm, Covington and Burling. It's a terrific law firm in Washington, D.C., now around the world. And I got the offer, but I'd been using a PC as a law student, as a clerk in a federal judge's chambers in Manhattan, and I was so committed to my belief that I could do better work with a computer, which included Microsoft Word version 1.0, that I said, I will only accept the job if I can have a PC. And the interesting response first was, well, why? We have secretaries who do that work. And then second, well, we're going to have to go to the firm's management committee to go get approval. And I said, well, go get it. And they did, and I joined the firm. It was fantastic, but I am a little surprised when I think back that I put that job offer in jeopardy to get a PC.
That's a great story. You were in the news this week. We'll get to the Special Olympics stuff. I really want to take a deeper dive on that in just a sec. But this week you were in the news because Microsoft joined a cybersecurity tech accord. 34 companies have joined together. Tell us about the accord and what you hope it accomplishes.
No, we announced this yesterday in San Francisco at a big annual cybersecurity conference. We're very excited about it. We spearheaded this work over the last year, really. It comes from a clear conviction that cybersecurity attacks are increasing. We're seeing more attacks from nation states. That is especially concerning. And we, as an industry sector, really have the first responsibility in the world to keep people safe. But we can only do that if we come together as an industry and we do it in both a principled and pragmatic way. So what this accord does, which brings together now 34 companies from around the world, and I believe the number will absolutely continue to grow, is stand up for two principles. The first is that we will protect every customer everywhere, regardless of their technical acumen or their nationality. And the second is that we will not aid any government in attacking any innocent citizen or enterprise. And then it calls on us to take two pragmatic steps to make those principles real. The first is to work and partner more closely together. And the second is to really build the resilience and cybersecurity capability of users throughout the economy. And I have to say, especially the small businesses of the world, where I think in some ways the cybersecurity challenges are the most pronounced.
Let's talk about the relationship between governments and companies like Microsoft, because in the news cycle, what ends up happening is there is an allegation of a cyber attack. The government facing the allegation says we didn't do it, and then that's about it for the coverage. What's happening behind the scenes between governments and companies like yours?
Well, a lot, because these days, especially the largest companies, have a strong, what we call threat intelligence capability. So we're typically able, in a relatively short period of time, to go quite far in assessing and determining who is responsible. So last May the 12th, there was an attack called WannaCry. It spread to over 150 countries. Literally within a matter of days, we had connected that work, that attack, with the group that is associated with the government of North Korea. It's the same group that launched the attack against Sony in 2015. So we, not surprisingly, share that kind of information with the kinds of governments that you would expect, the United States, the United Kingdom, others. What I think is most interesting, and from my vantage point, the single most important step in some ways that was taken in 2017 came in December. On the 19th of December, two things happened simultaneously. First, at the White House, there was an announcement by the Homeland Security Advisor that 6 governments, the US, Japan, UK, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, had all come together for the first time on an international basis to attribute that attack formally to the government of North Korea. Second, we announced together with the White House that the preceding week, 1 week earlier, Microsoft, Facebook, and another company that hasn't yet been comfortable sharing its identity had taken concerted action at the precise same moment in time to dismantle the malware capability of this North Korean organization by turning off their accounts, by launching patches that addressed the vulnerabilities that they were focused on, and by literally being able to reach out and clean many, many PCs that had been infiltrated around the world. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of quiet conversation and planning with governments that goes on. And then when the day comes, people have to decide, am I prepared to stand up and say publicly, we are taking this step? And we are, because I think we are not going to put a dent in the world's cybersecurity threats unless we have the courage to say that when we see these problems, we'll take action to address them.
So one more question on cybersecurity, and then I'll move on to the other stuff. What's interesting is that when our elections system was attacked this past year, I mean, we have people with really high-tech tools attacking a system where we're voting with paper. So my question to you is, and I know that companies are working on this, how to use technology to make our elections process more efficient, more safe, because paper, I'm guessing, isn't the most efficient, safe system, or is it?
Well, it's more safe than efficient, actually, and I think we do live in a time when we absolutely should put safety and security first. I think if you step back and think about the world, we went through a number of decades when there was a sense that technology was making totalitarian states more vulnerable. The fax machine transmitted information into the Soviet Union and played a role in the rise of dissidents there. But suddenly in this decade, unfortunately, we see technology having the opposite effect. It is making our democracies vulnerable in ways that we had never imagined before. And in a sense, we really have these 4 vulnerabilities: candidates and campaigns that are getting hacked. We have voting systems and the work of the actions of voters that can be tampered with. We have political advertising, especially on social media sites, being exploited in new ways. And then we have the broader discourse of democracy, increasingly on social media, being manipulated as well. So we need to understand, I think, first, frankly, the multifaceted and serious nature of this problem, and now we need to take new steps to address it. Last Thursday at Microsoft, we announced a new project, what we call the Defending Democracy Project. We have put in a new team of diplomats and engineers to go work with democratic countries around the world. We're making a special priority the midterm elections in the United States. We do this with a clear recognition that no one company can solve this problem. We will never solve this problem in a single year, but the sooner we get started, the better off we'll be.
Microsoft has long been known as a company that embraces philanthropy and encourages its employees to give back. Where did that start at Microsoft, and how has that commitment evolved over the years?
Well, it really started with one person, Bill Gates' mother. Some of you, I'm sure, knew her. Many of you knew of her. She was so involved in the local community. Of course, I think it's fair to say that the cause she championed was the United Way. So when Bill started this small company with Paul Allen and they moved up here from New Mexico, her advice to her son was, get a United Way campaign going in your company. And so really from the earliest days, Microsoft had a matching gifts campaign. It's a policy today by which the company will match up to $15,000 a year of donations that our employees make. Will match at the rate of $25 an hour the volunteer time that our employees commit. And last year, that collective effort raised $156 million, roughly half of which goes to right here in Puget Sound. And it is really, it's as much a part of the company's culture as the free drinks that Bill and Paul also created several decades ago.
Tell us about Microsoft's partnership with Special Olympics and why you and the company are so committed to the games this summer.
Well, it is a great commitment, and we are just so excited about it. Just as Bill was the champion in some ways of the United Way and employee giving, Satya Nadella, our current CEO, is a champion of many things, and one of the great things is a focus on people with disabilities. Satya, as you may know, has 3 kids, and he's shared the fact that 2 of his kids are special needs kids. And I think that has given him a great appreciation, not just for the challenges, but the potential of people around the world. We don't really stop and think about it, but 1 of every 7 people on this planet has some kind of disability. It may be permanent, it may be temporary, it may be physical, it may be a cognitive or intellectual disability. When Satya became the CEO in 2014, he made this a cause that he wanted us to do more to address. In the 90s, Microsoft was the real leader in the tech sector for products that served well people with disabilities. And the truth is, we sort of took our eye off of that ball somewhere along the line. And I think Satya said, it's time to get that back. And so it was in 2014 that he started to champion this. I took on the next year the responsibility for this area of the company. And it was in 2014, talking to Beth, that I agreed to be the honorary chair. And then the question was, well, who's the presenting sponsor of this wonderful event? And it was up for grabs, and she said, well, would Microsoft like to do that? And I think I said yes before I asked about the amount. So literally, I went back to Redmond, and the marketing people said, you said what? I said yes. But we are doing so much. I think accessibility has become actually a movement that is unifying our employees in new ways. And so to bring that together with this, I think, very special moment in time for our entire region with the Special Olympics USA Games is just a great opportunity.
We know that one of the most significant issues facing people with disabilities is employment. What is Microsoft doing to promote inclusive hiring, and how does tech figure into that?
Well, there's 2 great questions there. The first, let me talk a moment about tech, because I actually think that there is no area of our work as a tech company that has the more potential to do good or bad for people. If we create a new version of Windows and we suddenly render a screen reader inoperable so that a person who suffers from blindness can no longer do their job, we not only risk making that person unemployed, we basically risk making that person unemployable, because the unemployment rate is so high. It's over 50% for people who suffer from blindness. Now, on the other hand, it is amazing. There is probably, in my view, no area where artificial intelligence, AI, will do more to improve people's lives than to help people with various forms of disability. And one thing that just provides such an inspiring glimpse of this is a product we released last June called Seeing AI. Of course, we all walk around with phones that have cameras connected to the internet that have computing power. So what Seeing AI does is it allows a person with blindness to hold their phone, have an earbud, and the phone connected to the cloud tells the person what they're seeing. This is a room full of lots of people. Some of them look interested, some less so. It has that level of insight that it will bring to the conversation. So that's part of the movement that this has become. Now, what's exciting is that then this has spilled over to our hiring. And we're very focused on what we're now calling inclusive hiring. Others across the country are. And one of our best programs, I think, is what is our autism hiring project. We've hired 56 people with autism. And we've changed the interview process to work better for them so we can really learn about each other. And we are hiring some amazing people. They have special skills that are contributing to our work in really incredible ways. And frankly, what it has taught us is that we all have an opportunity to connect with people in the world today, bring them into our workplaces, change their lives, but change our lives and our workplaces as well.
When I watch football games, I see the Surface tablet on the sidelines. You guys obviously have a deal with the NFL. How are you using tech to partner with the Special Olympics this summer?
Well, one of the amazing things about the Special Olympics is we're going to have all of these athletes in town. It's literally the biggest sporting event here in Seattle in a quarter of a century. The last one was the Goodwill Games. So we'll have 3,000 athletes, 1,000 coaches, all of their families. And it is just so important in this process to be able to give these athletes and their families encouragement. And so we've created an online platform that people can use to do that, to share words of encouragement, to communicate with each other. That's something we've created specially for this. We're going to be using our Xbox and all of our other devices to really have, to ensure this is a technology-fueled event as well. But it's just one of the ways we're tapping the surface of what technology can do.
Beth also let me know that there's going to be a video game tournament,
Yes.
a pilot in retail stores to promote unified play. This is a concept that's happening in physical schools right now and sports teams, unified play,
Yeah.
because of the benefits to both those with and without intellectual disabilities.
Yeah, I mean, I would just sort of say I know we're almost out of time, that this is a special moment, I believe, for our city and for our region. And one of the things that we did is we said that this is not just about the Special Olympics USA Games. This is about Seattle, a city of inclusion. We're going to be on the nation's stage as ESPN covers this. But think for a moment, for over a century, every Olympics and World's Fair leaves something to the place that puts it on that is a lasting legacy. And I would argue that almost no place has created an icon that has matched what the Space Needle has meant to those of us who look across the city of Seattle from the 1963 World's Fair. We have an opportunity this summer to create something that is every bit as important. We've created a pledge so that employers can come together and get involved and volunteer, get involved, learn about inclusive hiring, but the single most important thing we can do, the gift that will give a decade from now, is to bring some of these inclusive hiring practices to more employers across Seattle, to add to the culture, wonderful Nordic heritage when you really think about it, and create an environment where people appreciate what they can gain when they open their doors to people with these kinds of intellectual disabilities, how they will enrich their own lives if they do so. If we can create that, you won't see it on the skyline, but it can have an impact that will build on the legacy of the Space Needle. That's what we should do.
Yeah, that's great. So I just want to briefly touch on leadership. You lead a team of more than 1,400 people at Microsoft in 55 countries. On a good day, I can find my wallet and my keys at the same time. How do you keep track from a managerial standpoint? What's the structure, and how does that work?
Well, I mean, as many of you know, and there's lots of great leaders in this room, it starts with hiring great people. It then involves giving them clear roles, trying to provide some sense of strategic direction, empowering people so that they can go do great things. As much as anything, we want to hire people who can go do great things, and then find some way to stay all connected. For us, start every Monday morning at 8 o'clock for 90 minutes with a group of about 20 of us. And we go through what were the big events from last week, what are the big events coming for this week, what do we have to keep on track for the month or months ahead. And at least then we all go out Monday morning at 9:30 as connected as we can be. But in the world today, I just think it's so fascinating. Leadership styles are evolving as the workplace is changing. We keep getting more closely connected around the world. I think we have a wonderful new generation of people sort of shaking things up. More than ever, it's not about telling people what to do. It's about setting common goals and then letting people get on to do their best work.
Last question on leadership. What's the biggest lesson that you've learned in leadership in your career?
Well, I always like to remind our folks at Microsoft, and especially across the tech sector, that there actually is no greater strength than humility. It's only by being humble that you have the ability to look at yourself and at least try to see yourself as ugly as the rest of the world sees you. It's only by being humble that you're open to continued learning. And especially in an industry that basically reinvents itself every decade, I actually think the single most amazing thing about Microsoft is if you look at the list of the 10 most valuable companies in the world measured by market cap, and you look at the list for 1998, 2008, and 2018, there's only one company on that list all three times. It's our company. And we've succeeded despite ourselves at times. We've succeeded because as much as possible we try to remain humble, and that's what we got to keep trying to do.
Well, I think we have time for a few questions if any of you in the audience have questions. How about Jan first up over here, or wherever is fine. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. Just a quick question. There was a big article in Seattle Times front page on Sunday regarding the treatment of women at Microsoft, and I wondered what you're doing regarding that issue.
Well, I think we have a tremendous challenge across the tech sector, certainly at Microsoft, arguably across the country, around the world, in creating more opportunities for women. I think the biggest challenge we have is we need two things. We need more women, and we need more women in senior leadership positions. We're starting, after many years of frankly not seeing much movement, of starting to see real movement. And part of that actually, I think, comes from finally doing in this area, diversity, what you do in every other area of business. You set a goal, you measure progress, and you pay your people based on whether they achieve it. So for 2 years now, all of our senior-most folks get their bonus paid in part on whether we're making progress on our diversity goals. And guess what? We're making more progress now that we're paying on this basis. So I think that's important. And of course you can see, you just put this tremendous energy into recruiting, to developing people, and then promoting people over time. I don't think that's enough by itself. You really do have to drive cultural change. And I personally believe that a workplace that is more friendly to women is a better workplace. It is a little less ego-driven. It's a little more focused on listening. It gets a little more collaborative. But I also think that that's a journey. When I became the general counsel at Microsoft in 2002, 22% of our lawyers were women. Now, 46% of our lawyers are women. But you can't do that in a year. You can't do it in 5 years. You just have to go after this and just know that it's one of the causes of our generation. But we have to leave things in a better place for the generation that will follow.
Well, a question here from David.
I recently read your book, The Future Computed, and was very impressed by it. I wonder if you could share a little about not only the opportunities posed by artificial intelligence, but how Microsoft is approaching the risks posed by it.
Yeah, I believe on the one hand that artificial intelligence, or AI, will profoundly impact us in many beneficial ways. It will probably help the world cure cancer. But it is posing two fundamental challenges for the world as well. The first is basically an ethical question. If we're going to let computers make more decisions, the kinds of decisions that human beings make today, how are we going to ensure that computers make ethical decisions? And that requires having a clear set of ethics. We describe this in this Microsoft publication, what we call the future computed. We're having to institutionalize this with processes, and frankly, part of your question about leadership, I mean, a lot of the questions that then pass my desk are frankly the hard questions about when we're going to say, as we are at times, saying, no, we won't use AI to do this. So that's one piece of it. The other is about the jobs and the economy. I think everywhere you go, or literally around the world, people sort of ask, are my kids going to have a job in the future, or is artificial intelligence going to take all the jobs? There will be jobs, that's the good news, but it definitely is a time when we need to reskill the population. We need to invest in education more broadly. I think there are many aspects of the workplace and even fundamental labor protections and the social contract we're going to need to talk about and consider revisiting, because it is going to be such a fundamental set of changes.
Hi, my name is Ariana Navarro, and I'm from the University of Washington Bothell Rotaract. And I had a question on behalf of the students there. What would your advice be to students who are getting started early in their careers?
Well, I think it's a fantastic question, and the first thing I would say is keep studying. But the real question, I think, is what to study. And to me, the most interesting and in some ways exciting thing about the future is this. I think the future in some ways is going to belong both to, say, people who have an engineering or math or technology background who also understand the liberal arts because of where computers are going, and it's going to belong to people who come out of the liberal arts who understand something about computers and technology. I think you're going to see more people at Microsoft. I hope you're going to see more people at Microsoft a decade from now who are working on our products who come from a liberal arts background, because we're trying to bring the best of humanity and the best of computing together. So for everybody, pick the one that you're most passionate about, but don't confine yourself to it. Push yourself on math or statistics or computer science, even if it's not your first love. And for those people who want to code all the time, don't code all the time. Go learn something about history or economics or politics or sociology as well.
Put some pants on and come out of the basement. Brad Smith, thank you so much.